Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paul Surin. I work for IBM as a global lead for BIM and built environment. I work across sectors like engineering, construction, asset operations, and manufacturing as well. I will talk about some of the challenges around built environment and how we see it built environment. I also touch on how is the industry changing. So you've heard about ISO 19650. I talk about the other standards as well. I will then go on to exploring how we can exploit built environment and what we've been doing as IBM. For example, SAP, Co-Build and Building Smart, and I close it down with some case studies. I also, part of my role, I joined IBM about 6 months ago. I spent 5 years working for an international manufacturer called Wienerberger, and prior to that, I spent about 8 years working for a large contractor in the UK. I'm also part of the CEN TC442 developing new standards around data exchange, level of information need, also data dictionaries. So in terms of some of the typical challenges, I might repeat myself, but I try to summarize it from the top perspective. And I'd like to highlight some of the issues we see quite a lot now around complex ecosystems. And the fact is that construction is not genuinely standardized, and we have loads of unstructured data and silos. I mean, with the explosion of the technology and cloud and obviously different kind of platforms, what we see now, and I definitely experienced that at Wienerberger, that we see in issues around databases, different providers like BIM Object, BIM Store, you have a Tekla, you have loads of different systems, and it's very difficult, especially for manufacturers or the data originators, to keep an eye on all of these and obviously keep the data up to date, but also the geometry, as well as kind of still compliance to regulations such as construction product regulations or smart CE marking. So there is a many small niche firms dealing with data. Part of also my job is working for Construction Products Europe as their chair of digitalization task group. And what we did with other associations, we did a research in terms of how many data related companies or dealing with BIM digital transformation are right now around the world, and the number is close to 300. So 300 different companies dealing with data or geometry. It's quite a high number, and usually it's very proprietary-driven solutions. And in terms of, I'm not going to talk about the low profit margin, but it's quite common, and it's commonly known that the profit margins obviously are from minus 1.5 to about 4.5% within the construction. So we need to build quicker, do better, and we need to step change how we deliver in assets. There is also, I think, last few years there's been the buzzword around BIM. Now it's the digital transformation, it's the digital twin. So anything to do with digital is kind of in. But when we ask lots of CDOs, CIOs, companies genuinely if they have a digital transformation strategy in place. 42% of organizations don't have that in place. There is also quite a fear on regulatory concerns. And regulations, I mean, not just ISO standards, but really the likes of construction product regulations, CE marking, local building regulations. They're obviously also very fragmented. So that is also part of the issue. In terms of how is the industry changing, we talked a lot about BIM today. I think it's important to also start looking at a holistic approach of Industry 4.0, intelligent built asset and circular economy, because there is a potential growth for the construction sector if we're looking at it from a holistic point of view. Because Industry 4.0 and servitization is driven by customer. We also want to know where assets are. We're now talking about digital twins. So obviously we need to build the models as built models. get them to asset models, and then get them to operate and start really analyzing the huge amount of data and giving the right outcomes. And then the circular economy comes into a place nicely, because obviously we want to understand how an asset could potentially behave throughout its life cycle. The things like calculating life cycle assets cost and etc. So that's very important to see it from that perspective. And that gives us the vision of a built environment. What is a built environment and digital built environment? So it's really, we're talking about getting it from materials down to components, building cities, and have the top-down and bottom-up approach, and have the feedback loop there as well. I like to always use this slide quite often, although it should be known by now what is BIM, but I think it's important to understand it is mainly about the information management process. It's about the life cycle management, so who produces what, thing, and when. It's less about the tools. There's been a lot I've heard today about BIM tools, BIM tooling, BIM calculation, BIM data. I think data is data. It needs to be interoperable, structured data. It needs to have the right purpose, and we need to follow the right management system. So, and it definitely expands from 3D modeling to genuine collaboration, from design and construction into operations, from individual building to cities. We have to start seeing it this way. This is a good set of slides I quite like from Building Smart, which were produced with GS1. GS1 is a company responsible for barcoding and QR code scanning. And it kind of shows the scope, the supply chain, and the asset lifecycle, how it works, and how an operator can ask questions about 20 years combined CapEx, OpEx for high quality new facility as an owner. By the same time, manufacturer would ask, okay, door, who needs this door? Things like operator would ask, I want to replace a door in a specific asset. Who can provide that specific door? And that's kind of, we're talking about that digital twinning and understanding different CDEs. So we will never have a one global digital dictionary or one global CDE. Obviously, that's understandable. But we will have this now vision of multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, because obviously cloud is coming to play. So what we really started to look at with Building Smart and GS1 and IBM and other vendors is, okay, we have an open BIM, how about we look at OpenShift, cloud neutral, start decoupling applications from data, start containerizing different applications, so we can really have a true interconnected dictionaries in place, and we can start shifting from modeling information to a proper intelligence, have a proper concept of a digital twin, having been able to use machine learning, predictive maintenance, things like real-time operation data, and what analytics and benefit from that. I mentioned the ongoing standardization work. Probably I'm not going to go into ISO 19650 because that's BSI did that presentation earlier. What I'd like to talk about more is the other standards up there, the TC 442, which is a group which was, I think, formed back in 2014 around standardization of a field of structured semantic lifecycle information in a built environment. And specifically, there are two common standards out, which are going to be out in Q1 2020, related to data dictionaries. And what it is literally about an expert process, how to describe and author and maintain properties. In a plain language is, if I have a CE marking, so I have a product of a phone, an iPhone or any product which is CE marked, behind the CE mark there's a set of data which I have to comply with if I want to sell a European market. Similar to now Asian market is looking similar things, US is looking similar thing to protect markets from obviously dodgy products. So the idea is then we have experts in roofing, in making bricks, in making, I don't know, precast concrete, in making pumps. They should be the one defining based on standards what is a data template. What is a data template which define a product type and a system, and with a reference to a current standard, how that is then transferred. So we don't keep creating IFC extensions all the time, because that's not sustainable. And also, it does not really give us the interoperability we need to achieve. So, in a nutshell, data templates is a common language. So it defines, by standard, defines product type, sets of properties like thermal resistance, solar factor, air permeability, and that gives a data template. You can imagine how hotel industry was transformed when you go on booking.com, you specify your requirements for your hotel, and that gives you an ability to compare on a like-for-like basis. It's because the industry agreed on a common template how to start comparing different hotels. Right now, we're not able to do that with simple product material, and I'm not going even into systems and buildings, because there is no common language for that. We also work, there is something behind, there's not just IFC, there's other standards we work with, like OpenStack, Kubernetes, I mentioned, Hyperledger, GS1. So we also, when we talk about broader picture on built environment, we also need to look beyond that. So this is a picture I think used back in 2016 by Mark Bew, describing how we move beyond the BIM design construction, and how we can explore things like asset operation maintenance, performance management, power, water, start really properly exploring the options which giving us the right, if we collect the data correctly, if we have the as-built model, what we can do with that and how we can use the technology. So to summarize that, the strategic objectives of built environment is obviously invest successfully in assets and infrastructure, deliver for more for less, maintain and operate for less. So there's definitely that OPEX, or now we see it as a TOTEX, total expenditure of an asset. And when we talk about an asset for manufacture, an asset could be a brick. For obviously a municipality or a mayor of a city, that could be the entire city is an asset. So we need to see it from that perspective as well. Transform and disrupt service models. So obviously we cannot keep delivering the way we delivering. So there is obviously also what governments need to also start introducing is a legislation, because unfortunately in our industry, nothing is for free, and no one starts just changing things because they want to. Unless there is that stick and carrot, then it's not going to work. But we also should not forget about the community, like ourselves. If you think about buying a house is one of the biggest investments in every one of our lives. You buy a house these days, what you're going to get is a pile of documents, which are usually, if you're lucky, they should be what's been built. Most of the time, it's not the case. So in fact, you buy a dishwasher and you get much more information about the dishwasher and the life cycle and the operation than from your house, which is quite sad in the 21st century. So we also need to think about, okay, a big project infrastructure, but fundamentally, we build in houses which we will have to retrofit in, 5-10 years time, because they will not be fit for that 100-year life cycle a house should be. Exploiting, so what we're doing, I mentioned with IBM, and genuinely I believe it needs to, the technology is an enabler. We need to start transforming the enterprise first. So we need to look at ourselves, company needs to look at ourselves, start being much more efficient, start from the data, internal processes. The AI the blockchain, the cloud, that will come, but it needs to start from obviously the basics. Then we can look at transform operations through IoT, experience obviously through blockchain and other stuff and products, but really it's important. That's why the transform enterprise is in the middle and the heart of it. And what we've been doing, I mentioned with Building Smart, CoBuilder, with Red Hat, which is obviously now part of IBM, and SAP as well, is looking at how we can really have a kind of a model, OpenShift, open source, OpenBIM, how we can enable almost like an API marketplace initially. So anyone you can make a sense of different applications, decouple the data, and as an owner, like a supplier's owner, subcontractors, contractors still own the data, maintain the data. Because there is much more than Autodesk, Graphisoft, Tekla, all these design softwares. And what we've seen in previous presentations is very much focus on that design stage, engineering stage. But there is much more. There is enterprise systems, there is finance, HR, there is on a disposal, there is environmental information, there is information which coming from logistic companies. And that's ideally should be all integrated. And we have platforms now. I mentioned technology platforms. We have Amazon, we have Microsoft, we have Alibaba, we have obviously IBM Bluemix. Then we have industry platform like Watson, we have ABB, we have loads of companies now trying to create platforms for industry. And I don't think it works, because what we ending up is having siloed data. So we have an SAP, we have different classifications. I think there is about 30 to 32 classification systems. And I mentioned early on the data templates, and that's the vision, and that's the idea of the CEN TC442 work and the standards which are going to be published in Q1 2020, that once we have a data template, we can start using properly the standard, the IFC standard, the ISO 12006 Part 2, but also we can start looking at 12006 Part 3, which is an IFD standard, which is not commonly known, but that's the idea of a data template, that we agree on a machine, we structure data according to template, and then after adding values from data template, we have a data sheet. And that will enable things like real estate, operation, integration, financial control, digital twinning, and etc. Better process management as well. Finance management, releasing, invoicing, payments, automatic payments, things like there's a lot of talk about blockchain. So blockchain for smart contracts, important, but again, it will not work as a siloed application, or it will work, but for certain only sort of isolated project. Things like track and trace, provenance of labor. If we look at other industries, what IBM did recently, we looked at shipping haulage companies with Maersk on how we ship and track and trace product down to its origin. I mean, there is a clear benefit of like 60–70% being cut out of waste in terms of paperwork. So it's doable, but again, it needs to be seen from that broader picture. And then we can start talking about things like, I don't know if you've heard about generative design, how we can speed up a design. There is a proof that we spend too much time designing. So there is if you have from an initial project where I say, okay, I want to build I want to build a rail or a motorway on that place. It takes, enormous time, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, before we even start building. And there is that risk of that. Obviously, we have usually 4 or 5 years governments, so policies are changing quite a lot. So there is that uncertainty for an investor that we don't have a 10 years, 20 years policy from governments understanding what they want from stakeholders, how they want to build infrastructure assets. So if we can start decreasing that time by using data sources, analytics, data insights, that will obviously speed up the process. It's also enabling manufacturers and the data originators to provide the data. So I don't design things which in 3 years' time manufacturer might not be able to deliver. So I mentioned with SAP, this is kind of a high-level architecture, how it could look like with what we're trying to do with, like I mentioned, CoBuilder, Building Smart, SAP, how we can really look into that, getting the business data internal with the external, and start really applying different AI insight and analytics through obviously standardized approach, open standards as well, and not being dependent on particular cloud or hybrid cloud or particular, again, vendor, not just from a perspective of engineering, but genuinely from a perspective of a cloud. And we work with ecosystem partners. I mentioned already GS1, Siemens, Kone, Building Smart, LivingMap company, ACOM, Arcadis, some of them are there. And there is just a highlight of what we provide right now in other industries, but I'm not going to go into that. I think it's important that from what I've shown, there is lots of possibilities, but it's about the structured data, about the digital language. So when I talk about window, other side knows that I'm requesting certain aspect about the window. So say if I'm a carpenter and I want information about window, I would probably be talking about the frame. If I'm a structural engineer, I need different information about the window. And if I'm a builder fitting the window, I need to know the opening. So that's the bit which hopefully the Q1 sort of time of 2020 producing this new standard will help to structure data and enable kind of use the vision of data lakes, but using the data templates as almost a filter or algorithm analytics. So I mentioned API, microservices, blockchain, Internet of Things, cloud. This will all help within our industries. This will all help to open up the new possibilities as well. So I have a few case studies to show. First one is a case study from Kone, a lift company. It's a video, which should hopefully come up.
At Kone, we manufacture elevators, escalators, auto walks, and doors. All of these devices are streams of data that we are collecting. In order to process those streams, we need a scalable way of handle the amount of data that is coming in. And that's where Cloud Function fits in perfectly. We handle that data with event-driven architecture. We use functions to persist that data and to generate further events on that data that are then utilized and consumed by applications and our customers and users. In our analytics platform, we analyze the set of data and we generate value predictive in a sense that we can predict the failure rate to a certain percentage that is about to happen in the future for our equipment. And this allows us to perform predictive maintenance. And this is kind of the whole concept that we have behind our 24/7 connected services, which is a promise to our customers that the equipment is connected to the cloud and we are monitoring it, and that's where we generate the real value for our customers from maintenance perspective. At the moment, we use almost all aspects of the IBM cloud. We use storage from the cloud, we use Cloud Functions, we use messaging services, we use IoT services. So a number of services are already in use in platform, and that use will only grow as our digital footprint in the industry grows.
So the next case study is from a company called Fancy, or Vinci, you know them. So what we're doing for them is, again, we're trying to link ERP or their enterprise system with kind of a project system and getting the data, the insight, learning on project mistakes, also adjusting project life cycle, aligning obviously to ISO 19650 work processes as well, and linking to legal, so like contracts, payment releases, and etc. So this is a really truly end-to-end platform which fancy allowing in France their supply chain to kind of come on and share obviously their data, their insights, and it's a really two-way communication to improve projects delivery and lifecycle cost optimization, lifecycle improvement, also decision support making. And then the idea is that obviously if it's all built on the same kind of workflow, same standards, that will make it their platform interoperable or interconnectable with other platforms of other construction companies, like even in China is looking at this China Communication Construction Company. You have ACS, Hochtief, and others like Strabag. They obviously need to start collaborating and exchanging the data. And on the Kone side, Kone is a great example how they kind of transform the way they do business. Another example, good one, is AECOM. With AECOM, we even looking at their design processes for engineers, what they do in terms of manual tasks. So fill in details about fan calls, how things can be automated, how they're using Watson analytics to optimize a process, even of process requesting information from manufacturer, which reducing obviously in correct assumptions. So these assumptions no longer are kind of with a human to make assumptions. It's just enabling them to make quicker decisions, better decisions as well. And the last case study is a Port of Rotterdam, where we really taking the concept of a digital twin to another level, where we preparing the Port of Rotterdam to be ready for autonomous ships as well by, I think they want to try to achieve it by 2030. We also enabling them to enlarge capability to handle larger ships as well per day. And things like proper understanding where assets are, so containers, which obviously enables them process containers faster as well, and obviously expand the potential of the Port of Rotterdam. So in a summary, I would say, obviously, it's an obvious one. The data is the all of the industry, but it's important that that we're really looking at these standards. We don't start reinventing new standards because just we won't. As I see it quite a lot in across Europe and in US, people work in silos. So we have VD standards. We have obviously DIN. We have different working groups developing standards just for a sake. I think it's important that we have a one common standard. And I think with the ISO 19650 series, plus the CEN TC 442 work, there will be a nice suite of standards complementing and enabling the industry to have a common digital language. So that will kind of break the silos, applications and tools platforms. Because right now, we have loads of platforms, we have loads of tools, some of it is called BIM tools. We even have in some countries, they're still requesting BIM data. There's still push for BIM objects. I think BIM objects are just an obsolete representation of a physical product. And we don't need genuinely BIM objects. We need structured data. We need some basic geometry for spatial coordination. We need to understand the level of details, need information at every stage to enable proper information modeling. Legislation and market surveillance is still relevant. We have to understand, and sometimes again I see it with as I call it, the IFC experts or the IT people. They're really in their silos with their IFC data exchange standard, and sometimes they forgetting there is something called market surveillance. Regulations, which we have to follow, fire safety regulations. And if we don't kind of bring those worlds together, we have a problem, because at the end of the day, manufacturers, contractors, they still have to comply with both. And so we creating, in fact, a waste again, and we're not getting the true benefit of BIM. And technology is really is an enabler for that transformation. Technology is not here to replace replace the humans, and their technology will help, obviously, to automate repetitive tasks, and it will should make us much more efficient and enable us this transformation, collaboration, and hopefully increase the margins of projects from, I don't know, the 4.5–5% to much higher, so we can kind of accelerate projects, deliver quicker, faster, and deliver basically as designed, as built, which has been a problem for years and years. We design projects, we deliver projects, but we have something called value engineering, which basically leads to disasters we've seen in Italy, in the UK, because we are substituting, we are rushing, we're not making the right decisions, and we're not looking at what the assets have been initially designed to do, really. So we're delivering different assets than we initially wanted. And that's pretty much everything from me. Thank you very much, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Okay.